The Center for American Progress did an investigative report to see how much money has been spent on spreading Islamophobia in the United States. This is a really fascinating investigative report because they found out that there are organizations that have spent a total of $42 million since 2001 to 2009 on spreading Islamophobia in the United States.
His message before a largely positive crowd of cops and emergency responders at this South Dakota Homeland Security Conference: trust no Muslim, especially those who organize.
Know your enemy. Know your enemy. All Islamist organizations in America should be the #1 enemy. All of them. The Islamist organizations, the Islamic Society of North America should be focused on. You got that on camera? Yes, please.
He is being paid $5,000 plus expenses to speak here with your tax dollars. He was also given a Rapid City police guard during his time in the city. A nice day's work. And judging by his website, where he highlights more than 36 speaking engagements, Shubat gets a lot of work. Being a terrorism expert has become a cottage industry since 9/11. The Department of Homeland Security has spent nearly $40 million on counterterrorism training just since 2006. DHS doesn't keep records on how much is spent just on speakers. But some of the so-called experts who go around the country teaching, and in some cases preaching, about terrorism and the dangers of Islam are not quite what they seem. People, it turns out, like Walid Shubat.
The first thing I want to ask you is, what was the purpose of your talk this morning to these cops and emergency responders here in South Dakota?
Well, being an ex-terrorist myself is to understand the mindset of the terrorist, #1.
An ex-terrorist. It's Walid Shubat's claim to fame. A terrorist, a PLO member, who bombed a branch of an Israeli bank in Bethlehem Square, throwing a firebomb on the bank's roof. The problem with the story, with a lot of Shubat's stories, is CNN could not find any evidence for them. And despite CNN's many requests, neither Shubat nor his business partner have provided us with any.
Bombings in Bethlehem Square, you specifically said you threw...
The bank was in the Bethlehem Square.
You threw explosives.
Yes, I did.
On top of that bank.
Yes, I did.
No record.
CNN's Jerusalem bureau went to great lengths trying to verify Shubat's story, finding the general location where the branch of Bank Leumi once stood, but not finding anyone who could remember a bombing. We contacted the bank headquarters in Tel Aviv, asking officials to search records. No records found. And Israeli police found no record anyone ever threw a bomb at the branch of the bank.
Why would the bank not have a record? Why would the Israeli police not have a record?
Why would the Israeli police not have a record? I don't know. I mean, I don't know where you check, what dates, all these things.
There's another part of his story that doesn't check out. Shubat says he was arrested and spent 2 weeks in an Israeli prison.
There's no record of you being in prison. I think there'd be at least an arrest record. They held you for 2 weeks. Wouldn't the United States know you were in prison if you were a U.S. citizen?
Well, how about me and you go to the Islamophobia prison and extract the records? The records are there.
Okay.
Would you be willing to do so?
We did, and the Israeli detention center could find no record of detaining anyone with the name Walid Shubat.
Yeah. I mean, you obviously can see why people are critical of your claims. There's a whole lot of gaps in your story.
There's no gaps in all of
We
my
don't
story.
have a bank bombing.
Because it turns out Walid Shubat, even on his own admission, was never charged.
I was in prison for a few weeks.
Was there a charge?
No, I was a U.S. citizen, remember? I was born by an American mother. The other conspirators in the act ended up in jail. I ended up being released.
There's another problem: his family. In the neighborhood where Walid Shubat grew up, relatives say he was just a regular kid. And Daoud Shubat, who says he is Walid's fourth cousin, goes even further.
There were only 2 banks in Bethlehem district, and they are Bank Leumi and Discount Bank. They were on Nativity Square, and Walid never had any connection with those 2 banks, not a close or a distant connection. I tell you, this is out of experience. I am one of the people who are considered a responsible man in the area of Bethlehem or Bet Sahur. I have never heard anything about Walid being a mujahid or a terrorist. He claims this for his own personal reasons.
What personal reasons? In part two, we look into the money that Walid Shoebat is making on the speaking tour. He's making quite a bit of it, but even that is shady as to how he's dealing with that money, Randy, and where it is going.
True, this is really so disturbing because you think about the connection between the Norway suspect, Breivik, and Wally Shaban. How much do we know about their connection?
We know from his manifesto, the Norway suspect, that 14 times he cuts and pastes the teachings of Walid Shoebat into this manifesto. He mentions Walid Shoebat 16 times. We have no idea that these two men ever met, ever talked to each other, but we do know that this suspect in Norway was an avid reader of everything that Walid Shoebat was putting out and continues to put out on his website.
Never knowing that he was a fraud.
Absolutely. And the police in South Dakota never knew he was a fraud. Apparently, the churches that ask him to come and speak, the universities that come and speak, nobody has gone back and checked his record to see if any of it is real. And we have found out that none of it is.
Amazing. Amazing story. I look forward to part two. Drew Griffin, good to have you here.
On one run, he planted a bomb at a bank in Bethlehem, right next to the Church of the Nativity. As I was walking away from the bank, east to the Nativity Church, where Jesus was born, I heard this big explosion behind me, and I ran away, and I was overcome.
In 1978, you had a bomb, and you were about to use that bomb in a bank. You stopped.
1976, yes.
1976, all right. You didn't throw the bomb in the bank and injure anybody. Why? What stopped you?
Well, I saw some Arab kids roaming around the bank, and the intention was not to kill any Arab kids.
This video will be about yet another fake ex-Muslim. This ex-Muslim goes by the name of Kamal Salim. He's a self-proclaimed former jihadi PLO member. He's been touring and lecturing in universities, churches, college campuses, along with Walid Shoebat. Mr. Kamal Salim introducing himself.
I was born in Beirut, Lebanon, to a Muslim Sunni family. I studied in Azhar al-Sharif in Beirut.
The only Azhar al-Sharif university that I know of is,
I studied in Azhar al-Sharif in Beirut.
Is in Cairo, Egypt. It's in Cairo.
I studied in Azhar al-Sharif in Beirut.
Cairo, Egypt.
I studied in Azhar al-Sharif in Beirut.
I was born and raised as a Muslim.
In school, I was identified as Muslim,
And all Muslims know what sin is.
But I became a very, very, very strict Muslim.
Good works and staying pure according to the teaching that I received, and growing as a Shiite Muslim, devoted Shiite Muslim.
The tribe that I belong to, 99% of the people are Islamic. As a Muslim.
Grew up in a Muslim environment, and
India, and I was brought up in London, England, in a Muslim family.
Adam Gadon, the so-called American Al-Qaeda who proclaimed himself the media maven, if you will, for Al-Qaeda, and was helping to produce a lot of these so-called Al-Qaeda videos that were all over the internet that made Al-Qaeda look really bad and made the Muslims look bad.
Should you fail to comply in full, we will deem it sufficient justification to continue to fight and kill Americans.
Come to find out, Adam Gadon's real name was Adam Perlman. And not only was he, in fact, Jewish, he was the grandson of a member of the board of the Anti-Defamation League. And if you've been following the history of the Anti-Defamation League, you will find out they've been very much involved in covertly supporting a lot of these so-called American Nazi movements. In fact, all the way back, just about the time of World War II, there was this scandal where the head of the American Nazi Party, which had a total membership of like 6, and yet they were getting all this press, was arrested for embezzling from his sponsors, which turned out to be the ADL, so that kind of blew up in their faces. So anyway, we have Adam Perlman, and he's been going around saying, I'm Al-Qaeda, I'm Al-Qaeda, see, I got a turban on my head, I'm a terrible Muslim, gotta hate me, gotta be afraid of me, and of course everybody's laughing at him now because we all know who he is. Okay, so they have brought in the understudy, and there's a new American Al-Qaeda named Yusuf Al-Khattab. Ooh, big scary name, and they've got a picture of him out there where he's holding all these guns and knives, and he's dressed up like a wannabe Rambo, and he's scowling at the camera, and he supposedly has this website with things in it, like pictures of the Statue of Liberty with an axe buried in the back of the head. I mean, very heavy-handed, very over-the-top. So, as it turns out, this is another fake. His real name is Joseph Cohen.
He's a 39-year-old New York City taxi driver, as you mentioned. He called himself Yusuf Al-Khattab, but he was born Joseph Cohen here in America. He is a Jew.
And he is another manufactured front to try and convince Americans that Al-Qaeda is actually here in the United States. And this is why we've got to be doing this, doing surveillance on the American people and reading their email and listening to their phone calls and all this stuff, because you never know when we're going to get into a situation with the American Al-Qaeda. And it's all a front. It's a fake. He's up there. He's there to try and create an enemy that doesn't really exist in order to justify the totalitarian treatment of the American people and to encourage us to go and attack them before they kill us. They're already here on the home front. We've got to go bomb those gosh darn Muslims, because they're infiltrating America, and they're ripping tags off of couch cushions, and they're causing global warming, and we've got to go and it's nonsense. It's all war propaganda.
Moetzet Yesha, in conjunction with My Israel, has arranged instruction day for wiki editors. The goal of the day is to teach people how to edit in Wikipedia, which is the #1 source of information today in the world. As a way of example, if someone searches the Gaza flotilla, we want to be there. We want to be the guys who influence what is written there, how it's written, and to ensure that it's balanced and Zionist in nature.
I came here to learn more about how we as Israelis and as Jews can defend Israel online, on the internet, and particularly in Wikipedia in this case. Wikipedia is a bit of a complex system, and it's sometimes hard to figure out the rules. I've personally tried to edit things in Wikipedia that were against Israel, small things, and I think that this kind of knowledge is important for anyone who wants to be active in defending Israel on the internet. Because right now, if you look online, if you do searches for certain terms related to Israel, it's just filled with anti-Semitism, anti-Zionism, and garbage, and there's not enough of us out there working to counteract that and make sure that the other side of the story, our side of the story, and our right side of the story is getting the right coverage.
That commentator on your blog may actually be working for the Israeli government. And if you look, it says, Israeli students and demobilized soldiers get paid to pretend that they are just regular folks and leave pro-Israel comments on Twitter, Facebook, YouTube, and other sites. They like to incite religious and racial tension. You'll find them everywhere, forums, YouTube. Their job is just basically to create tensions and stupid petty fights. They go around voting down good videos and voting up bad videos. They like to keep video makers and websites busy with nonsense. And one of their favorite things is to call for violence. You know, only the feds think to do it, and only the feds get away with it. Because if anybody else calls for violence on the internet, you're going to have goonballs at your door. So when you see someone who's calling for violence, usually that's one of them.
So this is how it'll look pasted up here in the New York City subway, just a whole lot bigger. We spoke with some New Yorkers who had no reaction, but many say it's pure Islamophobia. Abdul Warith Yazim was just getting off the train with his family when we showed him the poster. He questioned the simple responsibility of displaying the posters.
What happens when, behind seeing that sign, one of these foolish children go to school and see somebody that's Muslim and start calling them a savage?
There you go.
You're going to start a chain reaction. That's what's going to happen.
Perhaps that's what the group behind the signs has in mind. The poster says it's paid for by the American Freedom Defense Initiative.
And we're almost 10 years after 9/11, so where is this coming from? It's actually a sustained campaign that began well before 9/11. There is a network, an organized network that stretches across continents that has incited this campaign against Muslim citizens of America, and which is profiting off of it and has its own network of funders. Figures like Geert Wilders, the Dutch politician, who's basically a proto-fascist, which is completely undemocratic. And that's spreading to the United States through the funding of people like Aubrey Chernick, a little-known sugar daddy of the Islamophobic movement, who used to be a trustee at a think tank run out of the pro-Israel lobby, AIPAC, but who funds everything from Camera, a pro-Israel media monitoring group, to the American Jewish Committee, to the Anti-Defamation League, which opposed the community center at Ground Zero, to various figures like Robert Spencer, who is the key voice of pseudo-scholarly Islamophobia in the United States, who has gotten almost $1 million from this Aubrey Chernick character, who simultaneously runs a security consulting firm. So you could see why he would want to gin up this fear about American Muslims, because that he can leverage that into profits for his security consulting firm, which is designed to consult for law enforcement agencies on terrorism or the imagined threat of it. And they had their own group of experts, people like Stephen Emerson, who was run out of the journalism, mainstream journalism, because of his tendency to cook facts, and became sort of an expert funded by this network of Islamophobic sugar daddies and promoted by groups like the David Project to incite against community centers, to incite against Muslim activists, and it built over the course of 5 years from that little campaign in Boston through several local campaigns with this organized network of media experts who are not established academics, who have no credentials in journalism or academia, to gin up this imaginary fear of Muslim Americans. Politicians have figured out that this is a pretty good wedge issue. It's a good hot button issue. I mean, you can't talk about, you can't be anti-Semitic towards Jews in the United States. You can't be racist towards black people, at least openly. So they need someone to demonize, someone to scapegoat for their constituency, which lives primarily in racially monolithic areas. So Sarah Palin has called the Ground Zero Islamic Community Center a stab in the heart, borrowing language that Hitler used after World War I about Jews in Germany, stabbing Germany in the back. Newt Gingrich, who is a presidential frontrunner for the Republicans this year, appeared at the rally against the Ground Zero Community Center beside Geert Wilders, the Dutch fascist politician, and several shady characters like Pamela Geller, who calls Muslims Nazis. I mean, so you see them moving in the same circles as far-right extremists, and it's working at least for their base. Great way to distract from the fact that the Republicans' economic policies have helped get average Americans into the mess that they're in, and that their economic policies are the reason why people are being evicted from their homes and their mortgage, and they can't pay off their mortgages. And we saw this strategy in the 1950s in the Deep South to prevent poor whites and poor African Americans from getting together and forming a coalition against the Southern oligarchs by scaring poor whites about poor blacks being, Martin Luther King being a communist, and so on. So this is just a continuation of the scare tactics we've been seeing for a long time, but it's time to show that it's part of an organized network and not actually a reflection of reality.
I'm Sister Patricia, I'm from Germany, and I came all the way here with my friend Marlies, who is standing there, and my 2 daughters. First, I would like to thank Allah for making it possible for us. It's a dream come true, and for everyone who was involved just to make this happen. I have one thing to say to those new Muslims and to everyone here. Before I became a Muslim, you think of like dark men with their beards. These are the Muslims, they're criminals, they are rough, they're rude, and the women, oh poor women, they're so oppressed and they are so beautiful, why do they cover up? And subhanallah, the strongest men I ever saw are the Muslim men. And at the same time, I haven't seen any eyes much more filled with tears than the eyes of a Muslim man when the name of Allah is mentioned. And I haven't seen any woman more beautiful and more respected in Islam than the Muslim woman is. And being a Muslim is the best that ever happened to me in my entire life.
Bismillah. What if I told you that Islam is rooted in the word peace? What if I told you you've been deceived in what a practicing Muslim actually believes? What if I told you that Islam explains this life's meaning, was made for our Lord's pleasing, made for all, from the blind to the seeing, from the old to the teething, for all human beings? Let go of your fakely fabricated beliefs that are totally obsolete, held in the West and in some of our Muslim countries in the East. It's time to be loud and proud about a testimonial vow. I testify that God is unique and Muhammad is his prophet, and to the reason why we constantly bow alone or with the crowd. How ironic, the religion of peace and mercy is accused of controversy. Here are just a few of its rulings, and if your attention they're worthy. To kill an innocent life is as though you've killed all of humanity. Women have a right to divorce, inheritance, and who they choose to marry. Men and women are equal. We just have different responsibilities, which is normal since we are two different people. We can't gamble or have alcohol, because in it the bad outweighs the good, and that's it, that's all. Some sins are big and some sins are small, but God is the most forgiving. Ask and He can forgive all. The only unforgivable sin is dying while you've associated a partner in your worship with Allah. We listen and we obey. We pray 5 times a day. For us, Islam is the path of truth. From it, there's no other way. We believe in all the prophets, messengers, and all of their books. We couldn't care less about the color of your skin or the way that you look. What brings you closer to Allah is your piety and righteousness. And to that, every single Muslim can bear witness. We need to strive for excellence and encourage the good. Discourage the evil as everyone should. Obey, love, and respect your parents. They loved you, raised you, aided you. They loved you so much that in public they praised you. We need to worship the judge, the lover, the sustainer, the one with the greatest of all attributes. Worship none but God. That's all Islam is really asking. And in such a depressing world, we're taught that smiling is charity. And a smile not returned, it's very rare to see. What if I told you that the media is completely wrong? Keeps playing the same lame song all day long. Funny how, when a Muslim man has a beard, he should almost be feared. But practicing Jewish men adhere to their commandments because it's God that they fear. Funny how, when a Muslim woman covers, she's seen as oppressed. But a Catholic nun is seen as pious and blessed. Funny how the standards of truth and what we can accept is only found in the West, minus the rest. It's funny now, but as a Muslim, if God wills, I will love God until my dying breath. From the path of truth and peace, I will never rest. Islam closer to me than my own heart found deep inside my chest.